Our help is in the name of the Lord.
who made
who made
heaven and
heaven
earth,
and earth,
The Lord be with you.
and with thy
and with your
spirit.
spirit.
Let us pray. Bless, O Lord, this creature beer, which thou hast designed, ordained to produce from the fat of grain, that it may be a salutary remedy to the human race, and grant through the invocation of thy holy name that whoever shall drink it may gain health in body and peace in soul. Through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Hot water history, episode 143. Could be my favorite episode yet. This has been something that I've been waiting for a
It's the big
long
one,
time.
Charlie. It's the big
It's
one.
it's the big one. Our first third time guest. Gary, I don't know if you knew that. We've
Yes.
Trevor's reaching
God,
number 3.
God willing, this won't be his last. He'll be just a constant, uh, someone who cooperates with us as always.
I'm
We got Trevor
pleased to be
Alcorn,
on.
Trevor Alcorn of Tridentine Brewing. Trevor, what are we doing here? What's going on?
Well, gentlemen, I know we've been talking about it a lot, and we've been so grateful for your support of Tridentine and what we've been doing. And yeah, really pleased to say that finally we have our beer actually. So here it is, our first commercial beer, which is Cristeros Mexican Lager, and you can see it there. I'll be posting more about it online after the episode and really getting the word out there and about the artwork, the phenomenal artwork that Chris Lewis did for us on the can. But we brewed the beer, or had the brewed beer, had the beer brewed in Wisconsin commercially. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it ourselves in our basement for the home brewery. So we worked with a company, actually another Catholic-owned brewery up in Madison, Wisconsin, called Carbon 4, and they worked with us on creating the commercial recipe for three of our initial brews, which we can talk about. But of course, our Cristeros Mexican Lager, which you can see here, it looks a little bit darker in the screen, but it's a really nice amber color, clean, easy to drink. So we've been working with them on that. They brewed it a couple of weeks ago, and then finally yesterday they canned it. So we were there for the canning process, and there's nothing I think sweeter than finally, after years and years of just kind of like this dream idea coming into reality, having it finally, in your hand, the being able to grab, I was able to grab the first commercial beer off the line and save that for posterity. And really excited to finally get it in stores. So that's going to be happening actually next week. So next week we're going to be in stores starting in Wisconsin, around Madison and Milwaukee, and then shortly thereafter expanding into Illinois. So we're over the moon excited about it, and yeah, we really can't wait to get into people's hands. I know that we've talked about, both of you have had the opportunity to come over and help us with the brew day, which we're really grateful for the help. And so you got to see it up close and try some of the home brew, but we really can't wait to get the actual brew out there for a broader audience.
Awesome. So it's going to be in Wisconsin available. The best reason to take a little trek up to the Cheddar State.
Absolutely. Yeah. And of course, Wisconsin, just from a marketing and business perspective, Wisconsin's the number one beer selling state in the union. So a good place to initially start. It made sense because the beer is being brewed up there to tack on Wisconsin. So we're starting with Wisconsin, but of course we need to get it down to our home state of Illinois here and make sure that all of your great listeners in Oak Park can grab a Cristeros Mexican Lager.
Oh, it's going to sell out in Oak Park. I'll tell you that much. Um,
We can't wait.
Trevor, this has been an arduous process, and I don't know if you can be prepared for all of the pitfalls and hurdles that you had to either sidestep or jump over. So, can you tell us how much has your prayer life and prayer in general, both your own as an individual, but also the greater Alcorn families, and then friends like ours. How much has that been supportive and really pushed you through to the end where we can celebrate this glorious day that God's allowed us to have?
Wow, phenomenal question, Gary. I would definitely say for me, it's certainly increased, just because as part of the process on a personal level, it's really been a lot more just resignation, I think, to God's will on my part, and just kind of letting it go, not trying to force it, because you have this idea and you think, oh, it's great, but who knows? Who knows if it's going to turn out? Who knows if other people think it's a great idea? If all the stars can align to make it a reality? So, I think that for me has helped to just be like, all right, God's in control. Let Him take care of it. Obviously, you're still putting in the effort and want to make it work, but at the same time, just kind of letting it go from my standpoint. So certainly, I think that's helped greatly. It's also even my prayer life, certainly when it comes to the beers and the process. For example, even yesterday with the Christero's Mexican Lager, just developing a deeper prayer life and devotion to the saints that some of the brews are named after. There's countless martyrs, even as part of the Cristeros, that I've had a lot more opportunity to ask their intercession and to really grow in a deeper relationship, for example, with them. So that's certainly helped, at least me. And definitely, I'd say even with the broader family, certainly it's deepened. My father always has a very deep prayer life. So it even working through the brewing process, even yesterday, I got to see that up close. For example, we pushed off lunch a bit because my father was fasting yesterday for priests. He probably wouldn't like me to say that, but he was fasting into the afternoon, so we pushed off lunch. And so, just witnessing that in the family, I think has been powerful, certainly for me.
And your beard is grayer than before.
That's right. It's grayer than before, certainly. Hopefully, it's not exceeding my age here, but certainly
Yeah.
it's weathered me a little bit.
And has the whole process with all of the challenges, has it brought you to become more libertarian or more, what would be the word? Desirous to see free market forces be more in charge?
Yeah. Well, certainly it has for me, just because with alcohol in general, I think you get a really good front row seat into how the government messes up the whole industry and inserts itself into every single angle and
Every
crevice. Yeah, it's really insane. It's very acute. In other industries and other aspects, yes, there's a lot of red tape. The government wants its cut, but wow, it really is next level. Every single state, municipality, the federal government, everyone has their hands in it. Everyone has a permitting process, everyone has a licensing process, all these steps involved with lawyers, government needs its cuts for taxes here, and
Mhm.
here. So let alone all the other regulations that go along with it. Even technically speaking, the brewing industry, breweries are supposed to be under the jurisdiction now of the FDA on top of everything else.
Wow.
That happened in the last 5 years. So it's just an incredible amount of bureaucracy, and really doesn't really add any value. It,
Mhm.
when you get into the business, you think, oh, this is easy. I know what I'm doing as a brewer. I would just want to buy the materials, hire the staff, get the equipment, make it, sell it at a fair price, and then that's it, right? And it's like, no, that's not what's going on in reality. It's about seemingly, most of it is about finding your way through red tape at the end
Hmm.
of the day. And so certainly to answer your question, Gary, I would say that it's definitely pushed me more libertarian along the way. I don't know if I can exactly call myself a
And anti-capitalist.
libertarian per se, but I would say it's definitely pushed me that way very strongly.
Yeah. Well, give it 6 months, as we say in the business.
Yeah.
Well, and who do we have to thank for that regulatory and licensure red tape but 19th century Protestant women, of course, who would be at war with anything Catholic and having to do with brewing, thanks to the temperance movement. All the temperance movement did with those witches is just push government to regulate anything that smacked of alcohol. So thank you, Susan B. Anthony, you Elizabeth Cady Stanton.
You
So
know what? I will have to make sure that on our way back from Wisconsin one of these days, I drop off a 6 pack at the Women's Temperance Union up in the suburbs on my way back home.
absolutely. Yeah. Headquarters in Evanston.
That's right.
Oh, God almighty. A lot of things have burped forth from Evanston. That's a particular portal of hell, Oak Park North. So, but let's talk more about the beer than my historical frustrations.
Yeah, can we talk about the other two flavors?
Yeah, absolutely,
The
Charlie.
flavors.
Yeah.
What
Well,
are they? Is it Kool-Aid or is it beer?
I don't know.
hopefully beer. Yeah, the two other styles that we have are our Quartermaster Jerry Blonde Ale, which is a much lighter version. It's about as light as you can get on the spectrum. In fact, that beer it's brewed in honor of my grandfather who was in the U.S. Navy. So it's very like patriotic themed beer, and it's as light as it can possibly get. He was a big consumer of Busch Light, and
Ah,
we know
that's
that
all.
he would not probably drink any of our beers, maybe except for this one, save for this one. So it's as on the craft beer spectrum as light as it gets. So that's going to actually be brewed this week. It's going to be brewed up in Madison and will be packaged in early November. That's the
Awesome.
goal right now.
Well,
And
that'll be
then
in time for all those Wisconsin college students and Illinois college students to grab their Quartermaster Jerry because they love that. Well, when I was in school, I had a bunch of friends that went to St. Norbert up in De Pere, and at every party it was Bush Light, and I couldn't stomach it. I literally couldn't drink it, and they just grew to love it. A very acquired taste. You don't have to acquire anything but control and uh real understanding of your taste buds, or thanks for your taste buds to drink uh Tridentine's Quartermaster Jerry.
that's right. It is definitely a step up, Gary. So no worries there. It will be a step up from Bush Light. Um, but certainly there is I love to refer to some of the counties down this way, down south, because we're in Kankakee County, and some of the other neighboring counties is bushlight hell sometimes
Mhm.
because you all the neighbors, some variation, whether it's Coors or Bud Light or whatever, the neighbors or the friends around here. That's primarily what they drink. At least it seems that
Look at
way.
look at Fancy Boy over there with a high life, that type.
Exactly, right? Going all out.
Champagne
Um,
of beers.
yeah, so at least this is, competing at a certain level, you know, again, what we feel is much better quality, but
Mm.
competing in that kind of area for that same feel and style of beer. And then we've got on the other completely opposite end of the spectrum, we have our Diaz Irae Imperial Stout, which is like 10% alcohol. So quite the contrast with our quartermaster Jerry in color and in alcohol content. And that one we're supposed to brew by the end of October, and it'll be ready in November for the month of the Holy Souls, but not for All Souls Day. So we really wanted it to be out on store shelves by All Souls Day. Unfortunately, it won't be out by November 2nd, but
Uh,
it will be out by the middle of November.
Well, you know how we tended have these pairings. Like when you go to a restaurant, you have a pairing with a dish. You're going to have the stout or a porter with this dish, or a light ale with that. And I found that when you have such high quality beer as you guys create, I actually want to pair it more with experiences.
Mm.
So I just have whenever I think of, and all these, thank God that he's granted us the ability to have this, I don't know if you call it psychosomatic or sensual nostalgia, but every time I think about drinking a Dies Irae, I think about sitting down, as I'm doing right now. Actually, I'm reading a collection of short stories by Dostoevsky, and it's weird because actually what inspired me to read all these stories from Dostoevsky after reading Crime and Punishment a long time ago, and I've never picked up Brothers Karamazov, but I will eventually. But I think of sitting down with Dostoevsky, drinking a Dies Irae, and the reason I'm doing it in part was because Daryl Cooper on Martyr Made has this great series about Dostoevsky and Nietzsche and
Mm.
contrasting them. And I thought, well, let's do it in reverse order rather than having his interpretation color my reading. I want to do the reading first and refresh my Dostoevsky. I'm not going to read much Nietzsche because I kind of know what the gist is, but then I'll go and back and listen to the series. I hope with the Dies Irae in hand. Maybe I'll postpone listening to the podcast until November.
Well, I'll tell you this, Gary. Well, first of all, about the experience, I'd love to hear you and Charlie over at Dies Irae give your thoughts. I love the book series or the book review that you did a little while
Oh,
back.
on
So
To Kill a
bring back the
Mockingbird?
book. Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that. So, maybe pair with a Tridentine brew, have the book review and the experience and a Tridentine brew. I love the idea because I think what you illustrated is really kind of the gist behind how we see beer anyway. Personally, I do. And why I don't one of the reasons why I don't like a Bush Light, because it's not really about so much about the experience, right? It's at least with a more craft beer like a Tridentine beer, it is more about the experience and enjoying it. So like you can have a beer, maybe if you want to have two, but it's not one of those things like, yeah, I need to just pound these and put back
Yeah.
a six pack or whatever, to feel like there's anything there and it's just water. So
Mhm.
yeah, it goes well with an experience. I agree. I think especially like a darker beer, and I'm a huge fan of our Imperial Stout and stouts in general, and the complexity, it lends itself very well to sipping it and enjoying it over a book or some other type of experience.
Yeah, yeah, and when you drink Tridentine or any other great craft beers, you don't, and this is the greatest, obviously, but you don't want to wash away your troubles. You kind of want to be washed in God's grace and take in all of the beautiful, um, rightly ordered, sensual experiences that he's through his beautiful creation, his perfectly well ordered creation has given to us, and be thankful, really be thankful for those.
Yeah, 100% agree, Gary. It's not about being numb to the world, but about being
Yeah,
able to enjoy it more and being able to enjoy life more and aiding with that.
right, right.
Trevor, what's the big goal now? Obviously, the goal for a long time has been getting into stores, and soon that's going to be crossed off. What's next?
Wow. Yeah. So I think at least for the foreseeable future, because we are self-distributing. This is something that, especially my father is taking on, and he may have some help here and there, but uh, it's going to be a lot of legwork to really grow the brand and get it out there. So I see that, at least, for the next year, 2 years, it's going to be a lot of that legwork, getting it out there, growing the brand, expanding that way. But I definitely see as well just adding in another beer or two. So, for example, we're going to be in a grocery store chain in Milwaukee, and already the owners loved Christeros and the idea behind it, and they're already asking us, okay, what can you do about a red ale? what can you do about an IPA? Well, we would love to get an IPA on the store shelves that you guys offer, and the red, and so they were already talking about these things. So I think, looking at the next step on, okay, what can we do with getting another few styles into the mixture? I could definitely see that coming into play, even possibly next year, especially if we get more traction and the brand grows enough. So I foresee that at least in the short term, in the next year or two, just to try and expand a bit, and hopefully, who knows, maybe even get outside of Wisconsin and Illinois. I don't know that it'll be a national brand in the next year or two, but at least kind of like Midwest regional, get into some key areas. I think that's going to be our next big push. So it doesn't sound too sexy and like big and exciting, but that'll be the next step on the journey, and who knows where we go from there. If it's successful, possibly in the future, who knows if we decide that we want to go and build a brewery. We're seeing how this goes and how well it's received, and if it goes well, who knows what lies ahead for the future.
Well, it's a lot sexier than, even if it's just regional and local, it's a lot sexier than people constantly and without any break asking you, when's the beer going to be available? When's the beer going to be available?
Exactly. It's funny. It's kind of the inside joke that my wife and I have, because I'll post something online, or I unveiled our new logo, our rebranding for our main Tridentine logo and our short form logo. And my wife saw the post, and she came to me and she said, so when's your beer available?
Before beer hits my lips, it's all aesthetics.
That's right.
Frequently asked questions, Trevor Alcorn. Nobody cares. Nobody even cares how he's doing anymore. It's just, what's the beer?
Right.
What's the beer
And with
coming
the
out?
patience of a lion, he kindly and charitably answered, I don't
Yes.
know.
I
I'm
don't
going to
know.
do my best to make sure it's a reality.
I'm not joking. I put out that post on Twitter about the rebranding, and on the post someone said, "It's not in Houston yet." It's like, I know. Yes, I know. I'm sorry. We're getting there.
We're efforting. It's called efforting at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. So can I ask you just a rather more mundane question? That is,
Sure.
and I've asked you this before, but I think it merits since we're talking about various brews that you're making, have made. What is the one, again, we talked about how there are different beers for different occasions, meals, experiences, and the like. But if you just had to pick one, and God said, okay, you're of all the array that you've made and you want to put out, which one is your favorite?
It would have to be it would have to be an imperial stout. And I'm not just saying that. I mean, there's a reason why we made the imperial stout, because it's actually my father, Jeff, and I's favorite style of beer.
Mhm.
Preferably aged in a bourbon barrel, so like a bourbon barrel imperial stout. Uh, and the reason for that is simple, because for me, if I want to have a beer, and this goes back to the experience point they made earlier, Gary, if I want to have a beer, I want it to be an experience. I just want to have one. And if it's one, I'd rather it be complex and a lot there, maybe even more of a meal itself. So there's a lot of substance to it. And so for me, that's why I gravitate that way. That's kind of my go-to beer. Not exactly the best beer if it's really hot out, it's a summer, you just got done mowing the
Sure.
yard, you want to have something refreshing. Not really, but
Hey,
if I'm
honey, I
just
just mowed the lawn and I'm sweating. Pour me that imperial stout,
yeah.
like castor oil.
That's right. Maybe it doesn't go so well in 90-degree heat when you're sweating. But on other occasions, if it's just okay, it's in the evening, I want to have something, that's what I'd reach back for. It's just, I love the chocolate notes, the coffee notes, and there's just a lot going on with it. So there's a lot to really contemplate. It's a meal unto itself. So that's what I would be reaching back for, Gary.
Now, speaking of stouts, being not that much of a coffee fan, have you seen stouts that are a lot lighter on the coffee notes that you like?
Um, yeah, I mean, definitely yes. There certainly are some. So especially if you get into, like if you were to get into even like an Irish stout or something like
Mhm.
that,
Mhm.
more like a Guinness, I think that
Yeah.
you're shifting away from strong roasty notes to something a lot lighter. So
Mhm.
it is possible. That's also one of the reasons why my wife doesn't really like stouts that much
Ah,
because she's
mhm.
like, it's just so roasted, it's just coffee. Like so many
Yeah,
stouts just have coffee notes. That's
right.
true. But there can be some that are much more chocolate facing, much sweeter,
I've seen
and
vanilla really
yeah,
making
vanilla.
uh, yeah.
Yeah, and I've even seen a friend gave me a light stout. It was actually not a light like as in a light beer, but
Right.
it's actually just it looks like a typical ale. It's like a
Really?
pale color, so it's actually still a stout, and it actually has a lot of coffee notes to it, but
Mhm.
it's not so severe. So it
Okay.
was good enough that my wife actually liked it quite a bit.
Oh,
I personally liked it. So they do exist, and these like white stouts are out there as well.
yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, this is the big one. This is Celebration Day, and we're so honored that you postponed doing an official announcement of the canning and distribution just to have it on the hot water history hot water history hot water history podcast. That's awesome. And Charlie's doing it from beautiful
Nashville.
Nashville. Yeah,
Have you ever been to the Nashville airport?
I have not.
I have.
You have? I
Mhm.
think it's one of the best in the country. I know this
Uh,
isn't
it was
what
so
we were going to
long
talk
ago.
about.
It was so long ago, and I think I arrived. I was in a Dominican habit when I flew into the Nashville airport. So that's how long ago it was.
Trevor, what's been your favorite part of the last year?
The favorite part of the last year for me has just been really witnessing and just being able to, especially work with, my father. I mean, just really the whole family, but especially with my father on putting together a business almost from scratch. So that's just been really the fascinating part for me is putting together business and growing a brand. And a lot of that, some of it pre-existed a year ago, that was already going for several years. But for me, that's been kind of the most fascinating aspect of this because in my day job, I'm working in a larger corporation, and so I don't get to see all those things. I'm just a smaller cog in a huge machine. But with
Mm.
this, it's like you get to see every aspect of it. And I think to Gary's point, you also also get to see how the government kind of mucks things up along the way, like every aspect of it, all the red tape, not just the alcohol part, but just getting a business stood up and getting things going. So that part for me has definitely by far been one of the most interesting parts of this journey.
Great. Great. Well, I got another, like I said, another reason to jaunt up to Wisconsin. And there should be no reason why, especially Catholic organizations, Knights of Columbus, Holy Name Men's Club, should not be just simply limiting their purchases to Tridentine in the very short and long term.
That's right, Gary. Well, I will lean on you to put the pressure on them.
Oh, it's already being applied, even though the beer is not available until now. But
That's
now that
right.
it now the pressure is going to be stepped up about 30-fold. So
That'll be good. We'll need to put the pressure on them.
for
So,
sure.
uh,
There's nothing
you
like a
know,
good Catholic beer guilt trip.
that's right. Yeah.
Right.
So just really gotta push them into that. Tell there's no excuse for you guys now. Even if you have to drive up to Wisconsin, you need to do it.
Exactly.
It's a
And the
Catholic
beauty
thing
is
to do.
you don't have to participate in any falsehood or anything like that, any calumny regarding the other beers, because the product is so superior and its origins are from a great Catholic family with immense virtue, especially in terms of their perseverance, industriousness, more so the charity that reflects the Holy Family. And on top of that, just the charity that comes from an entrepreneurial family using their expertise that you've said before is generational. It's been handed down from the generations so that we as a consuming public might benefit from your tremendous work. So we're blessed, Trevor. So thank you.
Gary, if I ever need a confidence boost, I'm going to come to you and get a pep talk because you
Got
give
it.
like most amazing laudatory, sayings for me and the family. And yeah, I'm really blessed. I'm blessed that you guys have been really so supportive and really that you'd have us on. And I I know when Gary contacted me more than a year ago and said, let's make this happen. Let's get this on Hot Water History for the launch and getting it out there. I was like, all right, let's do this. And so it's been on the calendar. It's been on my mind. I'm like, all right, we got to do this. It takes off. We're going to do it. I'm looking forward to this podcast. So it's been on the mind for more than a year. So maybe, Charlie, I revised my answer to say what I've most enjoyed this last year is finally being on Hot Water History Podcast to announce this moment because it's been on my mind for more than a year.
Hey, you know what's funny? And I mean, maybe this will be a last note before we get to everyone's favorite segment, but and that's up to Charlie because he pulls all the strings here. But someone asked me the other day, and they're a close friend of mine, how did you get in touch with Trevor? And how did you get involved with promoting and having his sponsorship of the show and stuff like that? And Trevor, for the life of me, I don't remember. I mean, I remember all these experiences that I've had with you and Jeff and your mom and the brothers and with Charlie and I going out there for the brew day. And I remember going to the Coalition for Canceled Priests conference and the meeting out in, where was that? In Lombard or somewhere like that
Mhm.
around there.
Yep.
And or Glen Ellen, something like that. And I remember all these times with you, even on the podcast, but I don't, when was it that we just first made contact and how? I don't know.
Well, I can say it was you on Twitter, Gary. So you
Oh,
reached
yeah.
out on a
Okay.
post and you said, "Hey, would you like a signed copy of A Twisted History of the United States?" And so then I
All right.
reached out via DM and
That's it.
then you sent it to me and then you're like, "Hey, would you like to come on the podcast?" And so yeah, it started from
Okay.
there and yeah, like the rest is history. So all the other experiences that you noted.
That's awesome. Okay. Yeah, it was Twitter. So Twitter is good for some things. And
That's right.
through that channel that we were able to have this beautiful connection and now friendship, if I'm so
Yeah.
bold to say.
You know what, Gary? I would say, people have asked me before, like, what's the best part of Twitter or X or whatever people want to call it? And for me, it is the prayer requests and it's the connections. I
Yeah.
think those are the two things. Like actually making real connections, not like, hey, I got X number of followers on Twitter.
Right.
Not that's all great and everything, but that's not a connection. So like
Mm.
connections with individuals like Charlie and yourself and others, to me, that's been the gold within
Yeah.
Twitter. So I've really appreciated that.
Mm-hmm. It's worth its
But
weight in that case. So
absolutely.
turn it over to Charlie.
Yeah, everyone go get your Tridentine Brewing when it's in stores. And now we're gonna get to Gary. I think we should talk about a town that needs to be flooded with Tridentine Brewing.
Hurricane Tridentine.
And that is people's favorite segment.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
We should go to your gay suburb now.
Yeah.
Meanwhile in Oak Park. and we've got a couple good ones for a good episode.
I love
Ra-
having Trevor on for these two because I could see his facial expressions and then the commentary and the moans. I enjoy it.
Raking leaves into the street could lead to fines. Penalties of up to $750 are possible, but Village will focus on educating first.
How long does that lesson take? Don't rake the leaves in the street.
Oak Park residents who intentionally defy the new leaf removal program by raking leaves into the street rather than bagging them for collection or keeping them in their yard could be subject to a fine up to $750. Oak Parkers have been abuzz about the changes to the fall leaf collection that typically runs from late October to early December. Some locals aren't happy with the decision to require residents to bag leaves for collection. One resident, Robert Parks, shared a petition with trustees in June, signed by 1,875 residents, asking to delay leaf bagging until 2025. The village board voted 4-3 that night to move forward with the change this fall. But some residents may resist. Trustee Brian Straw told the village board back then that he, quote, had some interactions with folks who suggest they intended to engage in some civil disobedience and leaf collection.
Oh man, it's like the March on Selma, and now and Stonewall, and now it's the pushing of leaves in Oak Park into the street.
This is
Right
the
on par, right on par.
it's the but yeah, this is the Tea Party. This is the Tea Party for Oak Park.
This is the Tea Party. This is open rebellion. This is Lexington and Concord.
It's cool to shut down winter sports, but during
Right.
COVID, but the leaves is where we're really going to get feisty.
Yeah.
Dan Yopchik, the village's chief communications officer, said the village has not received any direct communication from residents who intend to defy compliance with the new program. He said village staff has, however, seen some residents expressing their disagreement over the change on social media and in Wednesday Journal's Viewpoints section. Oak Park's Village Board originally approved requiring residents to bag leaves for collection this fall in a 5-2 vote on April 30th, ending the practice of raking leaves into piles in the street. But residents can choose to leave their leaves in the yard as they fall, compost the leaves, or place them in a bag or bin to be collected. What will the village do if they decide to defy the changes by intentionally pushing leaves into the roads? The first step will be to continue educating residents and landscapers as necessary. In June, Rob Sproul, Oak Park's Public Works Director, told the board if residents rake leaves into the street, village staff will educate them about the new program and hand out materials to help ensure compliance.
We got to get our hands on that brochure.
Yapchik said the village is trying to mobilize its staff that are already out on the streets and more likely to see people raking or blowing leaves into the roads to communicate with residents as necessary. This includes workers from neighborhood services, public works, the police department, or the fire department. The village has also been working to provide education through its newsletters on its website, Yapchik pointed out. But if someone is found to be intentionally raking leaves into the street or reported as doing so, the Code Compliance Division of the Neighborhood Services Department may reach out. This division consists of a code compliance manager and 6 inspectors.
That's what all those regulation and tax dollars, all that regulatory body is out there to hire those 6 what are they called? Inspectors and the compliance manager.
So it's interesting how they use the word education here, and I was thinking about it as I was first reading it through, of just how much education and schooling is really just about compliance at the end of the day, especially for these government funded schools that just take the context that they use educating residents in this context and then equate that to how it's used in schools. And it's really not much of a difference at all.
Right. And the dynamic has gone from wherein the real totalitarians in schools for decades, in fact, centuries, and other institutions for that matter, would have been mad at the rolling of the eye or something like that, or kind of subtle defiance. Now I think that they enjoy looking at the rolling of the eye and subtle defiance, and then still the enforcement, they get kicks out of that because they say, oh, you can laugh and you can roll your eyes and you can be um passively engaged or even formally in an intentional way engaged in a type of disposition that says this is all stupid and ridiculous and I hate government officials and bureaucrats. But guess what? All that being the case, you're still not going to rake those leaves into the lawn. You're still going to have to ask your teacher to go to the bathroom. You're still going to have to send your kids off to foreign wars or something like that.
Gary, it's just important that we have the conversation. Okay. That's why they're handing it out.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Trevor. Perfect timing. Great timing there.
Yapchik said it's unlikely that residents would be fined initially, but residents who refuse to stop raking leaves into the street could be subject to a fine of up to $750. That's the highest possible fine, Yapchik pointed out, but fines, if issued, would be determined through the adjudication process. Quote, especially in this first year, we're really prioritizing education and working with people, he said. In theory, a resident could get multiple citations or fines, but it's unlikely early on, Yapchik said, as opposed to a repeat offender year after year. According to a letter from the village to local property owners, quote, if yard waste materials or leaves are placed in the street by a landscaper, the property owner where such material originated may be responsible for the removal of the yard waste material or leaves. Commercial properties and buildings with 6 or more units are also responsible for their own leaf collection and disposal. This is a boring article now. A thin layer of leaves may fall into the street from trees that arch over the roads, or after being blown out, the village has already started trying to take care of those, and that will continue throughout the collection period, Yapchik said. Leaves intentionally pushed or piled into the street might be different, but he did not confirm whether the village or resident would be responsible for cleaning it up. Other municipalities in Illinois that have leaf bagging requirements for collection haven't seen much of an issue with residents raking leaves into the street instead, Yapchik said.
Because they're not insane.
$100 that Evanston's one of those too.
Oh, you know it.
But which is why Oak Park's doing it now.
Right.
But if that happens, that's not okay. Now this is our weekly grammar mishap. But if that happens, he emphasized again, the village will focus on educating homeowners and landscaping companies on how to handle the change.
Trevor, you don't know this, but I actually slip someone at the Wednesday Journal, the editor of the paper, a 20 every week, just so that they include these terrible grammar errors, so that those not watching via video on audio think Charlie just can't read, and he is basically the John Fetterman of the greater Chicago area.
It's working, Gary.
It's worth
Keep
every
it
penny.
going.
It's worth every penny, Trevor.
Local League of Women Voters chapter turns 100.
Oh yeah, well here we go. You could tell that the League of Women Voters, temperance movement. They're voting teetotalers. Those little, yeah. I was about to say
Centennial Gala for Oak Park and River Forest chapter will take place on Sunday, October 20th.
Oh, look at that party bunch! Can't wait to sit down with have a beer with them. They look like a bag of monkeys.
In 1926, months before the ratification, here we go, of the 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote, the National League of Women Voters was founded.
And the country was lost.
4 years later, an organization that was previously known as the Oak Park Civic League changed its name to the Oak Park League of Women Voters. The rest, as they say, is history. The League of Women Voters of Oak Park and River Forest Centennial is now in full swing, with historical exhibits showcasing its history in the River Forest, Oak Park, and Forest Park public libraries.
Sure to put you asleep in 2 minutes flat.
Also on October 20th, the League will hold its Centennial Gala, a dinner at the 19th Century Club, 178 Forest Avenue.
Where it should have stayed.
Will you be going? Will you be going?
Black tie affair.
Will you be going to the Centennial Gala?
I'd say black tie affair, but that'd be racial appropriation for the League of Women Voters Oak Park.
Where it will celebrate its work educating voters and defending democracy.
Oh.
The event is open to the public.
They slip that in. I love that.
As one of the two largest LWV chapters in Illinois, second only to Evanston.
The prescience on this podcast is just off the charts.
LOWV OPRF encourages voters in the community to be informed on pressing community issues, including tax referendums, school funding, and traffic safety.
Trevor, I have to say I'm a little bit shocked that the Herscher chapter is not the largest.
I am too. I'll have to work on it. I'll see what's going on.
See what you can do. Rabble rouse.
Our local league has literally made a difference in our lives, said
Literally.
LOWV OPRF archivist Mary Ann Rajnik. Quote,
Progenic. That's close, yeah.
the league has been throughout its history here campaigning for voter education, for the awareness of participating. In its earliest days, the league's core concentration was spreading voter information. According to LOWV OPRF historical records, on October 9th, 1924, a meeting was held during which a Republican, Democrat, and Lafayette progressive informed listeners on presidential nominees and party principles. This planted the league's
Robert Lafayette.
this
Socialist.
plant this planted the league's roots in Oak Park. 100 years later, they are still standing. While local politics looks different than it did a century ago, Oak Park is no longer doing public health examinations at dairies. One principle remains the same. The league is nonpartisan.
What they were doing public health examinations at dairies?
That's a little weird.
That's a weird drop, isn't it? Like, if you're gonna drop that in, you kind of got to explain, right? Were dairies the only ones that were available? Were they just breast exams? I don't know.
Quote, the league is all about educating voters and getting people involved, not telling people what to do, said member Carlotta Lucchesi. Except get out there and vote. Except for that one.
Yeah, and of course, vote for Trump.
Yeah. Joan Petertil joined LOWV OPRF in 2004 to support its, quote, advocacy and educational priorities. She has served on the board for 7 years. Quote, it's very interesting to work with a group of women who are like-minded for the good of the community, she said. But it all comes down to upholding democracy. The league is working to help voters confront and combat a democratic menace, misinformation.
Yeah, here we go. Here we go, women voters.
With society's fixation on the internet, Lucchesi believes that addressing misinformation is imperative. Quote, it's an issue that the league is trying to help people understand, she said. With the internet and everything, how people edit what's real and what's fake. On Tuesday, September 24th, the LOWV OPRF held its fall kickoff event, Fake News, the evolution of alternative facts and the growing threat of mis/disinformation. To aid local voters in evaluating.
Brought to you by fellow League of Women Voters president, Brian Stelter.
To aid local voters in evaluating their news sources, helping to ensure that their information intake is reliable. Quote, it was a wonderful program, said Brejnik. I think it's important that people have a way to learn about the issues that isn't polarizing. This is where the league's work comes in. Quote, the program was a perfect example of the league taking a current issue and offering some well-reasoned discussion of it, and people can ask questions, she explained. But the real celebration, the one with seared bass, chicken breast, and pasta pomodoro, is on Sunday, October 20th, beginning at 5:30 p.m., with cocktails followed by the dinner.
The real organization of the people there.
Seeing as it is the League of Women Voters, the event involves local politicians. Oak Park and River Forest Village Presidents Vicky Skaman and Catherine Aducci, respectively, and Forest Park Mayor Rory Hoskins are honorary co-chairs of the event. There will also be live music as well as a historical exhibit.
For the record, I was asked to co-chair the event as the local anarcho-capitalist and regional and national and international historian. And I'm busy I'm washing my hair that day.
For LWV, OPRF, the centennial is a representation of its reign of accomplishments which have filled the past 100 years and established their ever-evolving legacy. Quote, throughout its history here, campaigning for voter education, for awareness of the importance of participating, doing studies on the schools, said Prechnik, it's been a really powerful force. While its presence is alive and well, she feels that the recognition of the League's community impact has diminished. Quote, I think people have forgotten that or never realized it, she said. Still, their work continues to empower voters of Oak Park and River Forest, as well as the surrounding communities. They have a legacy to fulfill.
What does that
Quote,
mean?
oh gosh, here's the quote of the week. Quote, an educated voter is a powerful voter, said Lucchesi. That's actually
That's
not true.
that's absolutely not true.
They're all, it's all
They're
worth
all
one.
equal
No,
power.
I promise that it's all worth the same.
Right. And by the way, if they were of equal power, why are they? I'm sorry. If one vote is more powerful than another,
Yeah, it
why
actually
are they?
wouldn't be a democracy then.
Yeah,
So
that's not their goal of democracy. Unless maybe we're misreading them totally, and they're going to a very limited democracy where like 3% of property owners or 3% of the population who are property owners can vote. In which case, I'm all ears, League of Women Voters. Of course, that would also tend to limit the number of women who'd be able to vote.
I don't think they're going to do that.
I'm not. I don't think they're pursuing that at all. Especially if you drove out all of the supposedly minority-owned businesses in Illinois that happen to be headed by women who are just the wives of the people or the men who are actually running the business. Man, I mean, we're talking like no women voting at that point. I'm gonna write. Maybe I should write on the viewpoints thing about how misogynistic the League of Women Voters is in Oak Park with all these proposals to limit the vote.
Any thoughts, Trevor?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Lots of thoughts on this. I mean, yeah, like I mean, at this point, is like the League of Women Voters, is anyone like seriously think it's anything other than basically a democratic socialist organization of older women, right? I mean, I think that the oldest one was a boomer in that picture, and
How
that's
dare
kind
you?
of
Kamala's cool. He's down with it, baby.
yeah. There's probably, I think that line, not the powerful voter, but like the line that really stuck with me is, I think people have forgotten that or never realized it. Like, okay, that means the organization's
You're
dead.
failing.
If people don't actually know you're there or that you do anything,
Right.
okay, I think that the end has come. Maybe it did something in the beginning, but the party's over. Except at
Basically,
the 19th Century Club,
yeah, the League of Women Voters is like a liberal Catholic sisters congregation. They're racing to see who's going to turn the lights out.
That's right. Yeah, pretty
And
much.
oh, someone turned the lights out, but the chicken pomodoro is still in the refrigerator. Oh, we donate that to a soup kitchen, but we really don't care. So we care about misinformation and democracy.
Oh my gosh, what a misinformation. I will say one other thing too about the prior story, which was funny, just in regards to the Leafs, which previously being a trustee, a village trustee for my town, it's funny like these little issues that come up and that really get people fired up. In my town, like you have to take care of all the leaves yourself. Like no one comes. They don't even, if you bag it, they're like, fine, whatever. We're not picking it up still. Like
Right.
you haul it away yourself, all of it, everyone in town. But really what was fascinating for me is the fact that they did that petition and that people got so fired up. It's just like such a fascinating insight into what people will actually, riot over. Well,
Yep.
things, something you'd never think, like, oh, people could be killing babies and no one cares.
Or
Wait a
forcing a
second.
vaccine into kids' arms.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, guess you can't go anywhere anymore. I guess you need to wear a face mask everywhere. But hey, God forbid that, I have to do any more work. And I get it. Like they probably pay 3 or 4 times more taxes than I do. But at the same time, it's like what will trigger people to like go in revolt. And it even happened in my town recently, where there was a proposal to move the school from where it is now and to build a new school in a different town. Hundreds of people came. The police had to be called. People were shouting, like the sheriffs had to be called in. They had to shut down the meeting. They had to reverse the vote because they voted. This happened all within like a couple months. Like reverse the vote, voted one way, and then
Shays
they got
Rebellion,
so many,
Shays
yeah,
Rebellion,
pretty much
Herscher
over.
style.
Yeah, so like it's those little things. So it's always fascinating, like what people will, ignore. There could be a genocide going on or something else, but it's like that little thing that really sparks people, and it's like, okay, that's what I'm going to sink my teeth into. It doesn't matter that my money is being all wasted away with inflation or taxation, and there could be another war that's right on the horizon, or what's happening with children or whatever. Babies don't care, but God forbid, like you get in the way of my leaf extraction in my yard, there is going to be hell to pay. So fascinating.
That
Democracy.
that's an interesting historical hermeneutic, though, we're bringing up, because you could get a better sense of a time period or era or people's culture by seeing what they protest. What's the crux of their protests? So whereas in the previous eras we had a Boston Tea Party, which of course they weren't protesting tea, they're protesting the principle of indirect taxation or direct taxation. So or just for that matter, sovereignty of the British Crown over the commerce of Boston Harbor. Uh, I'm doing a lot of work now, Trevor, on the revolution and what transpired vis-a-vis the church, and especially in the war against the Vendée and southeastern portions of the Lyonnais region in France. You get a sense of how demonic the revolution is just by reading accounts of that. So you go on a spectrum. You go from healthy culture articulating principles of sovereignty and self-sovereignty and independence, and then the demonic, where you have babies lanced as they were suckling on their mother's arms to the applause of Republican troops in the Vendée during the revolution. So, yeah, it's a much more from looking at those protests and the history of protests, you get a greater sense of what were truly the values of the individuals living therein.
A phenomenal point. I completely agree.
And
It
in the
makes
annals of
priorities
history,
clear.
in the annals of history, Oak Park will be known as the suburb that protested leaf collection.
That's the segment.
Boom.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
What would have happened if I'd gone for it and just said, no, I'm gay?
All
What
right.
can we
Well,
say, Trevor?
yeah, we've been waiting for this for almost a year, Trevor. So really appreciate it. And thanks for keeping your word. We've kind of asked, Gary was smart enough to ask before it was cool to ask to have you on the podcast to announce this. So we appreciate you sticking with us.
And I appreciate you having me on for the three-peat, So
yeah.
who knows? Maybe it won't be the last time. But I really appreciate you both having me on, humoring me, now, and it's been really appreciated. I love coming on, and thanks for all that you do and promoting the church, promoting liberty, and promoting Tridentine Brewing. We all really appreciate it.
Well, it's a stroke of providence from the Almighty that we know you and can call you friend, and eventually, of course, get those beautiful cans and that incredible beer down our gullets there.
That's right. Very soon.
Very good. Well, God bless you, Trevor, and God bless your wonderful family and everybody associated with Tridentine Brewing. And God bless all you listeners of Hot Water History. This is the beautiful day that the Lord's made, that we can announce this great endeavor coming to fruition.
Peace out, everyone.